Hello friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks workshop, and we're back from Mountain View, Arkansas. Don't know when this video is going to air, so we may be back a long time before this actually hits the air. But we had a great time in Mountain View, a lot of fun jamming. Unfortunately, none of the audio that we took while we were there turned out. The video was fine, but the audio was just terrible. So nothing I can really put out to show you what it was like at Mountain View, but it really was a fun time. Had a great time jamming. Everybody that was there said it was just wonderful. We've got a project here in the shop today. Wow. It's an Ovation guitar. It came to me just like you see it. The big hole here in the side, I think her name was Lisa from Green Acres. She would say the electrical parts are missing. Electrical. And yeah, they are definitely missing, but he took them out there in the case. There's a reason that it's disassembled this far, and that is that it is loose all the way around here. Literally loose. Now, sometimes they pull loose at the bottom seam here underneath the white, and they separate between the white and the black. That's not the case here. This one's separated between the wood and the binding all the way around. And if you just look at it like this, you think, there's no problem at all. But if I put my hand inside and lift up, and you will see what happens. Okay, so I'm gonna go, I got my arm inside there, and I'm gonna lift up a little bit. And you can now see, I think, that the edge has lifted up proud of the binding here. My thumb is rubbing right around the end of the edge there. Therefore, there's no glue on the end of the edge, and there's no glue underneath it. We will go inside and show you what that looks like from the inside. I think you can see here that we are descending into the belly of the beast. Forgive me for the shaky camera, but it's hard to fit your arm through that hole and hold on to that little round thing and try to keep it level and all that. So it's a little difficult to film in there. But anyway, as you can see now, there's a light spot back at the top. If you look at the top there and that long light crack, that is the area that's loose. And it's loose all the way across there, as you see as I'm panning all the way around. That dark area that's on the top, right at the crack, I believe is old epoxy or old glue or whatever. And that's another issue. And there's no way to get in there and really clean that out without taking the top all the way off. You can also see mold and mildew on the top. Right there's some more mold. And we're going to have a discussion about mold. I think I give you a better picture of it here in just a minute. And there I'm going in for that shot of some mold up there. I think you can see. Right there it is on the top. And I believe there's some more to the left. And I don't know if I show that again or not. Yeah, I do. I think there it is. You can see the mold specks there. So we're going to have a discussion about humidity. Now it's time for that serious discussion of what do we do about it? Well, the first words out of most people's mouths are epoxy. Epoxy this, epoxy that. You know I get hate mail, and I know I'm going to get thumbs down, and I know I'm going to get all kinds of smarty comments. In my opinion, epoxy and guitars just do not mix, period. Now, you're going to say, well, they work great, you know. Well, maybe they do, but I've been doing this for a very long time, as you know, and I see certain things fail all the time. All the time. And it's so consistent that you go, well, this must not be very good because it fails all the time. Epoxy is one of those things. Now, here's my theory. I don't know why, but here's my theory. You know, this is why I think it fails. Epoxy is not very forgiving. Yeah, it's great for certain things. You know, if you got two stationary things that you're locking together, you know, and they don't move, they don't vibrate, yeah, it's probably fine. But epoxy likes to be rigid and solid, and it doesn't like to give. Well, name something on a guitar that doesn't give. I mean, if you think about it, the neck, for instance, is always got some flex. It's always being pulled up, and that joint's always being stressed, and over time, stress, up and down stress, playing it, it's vibrating, it's stressing. Same way with the top. Granted, you think, well, the strings are doing the vibration, but that wood is vibrating. And those microscopic vibrations travel through that whole wood, and they are constantly bombarding all the joints with vibration. Now, granted, the other legitimate reason why it would fail is that gluing two unlike materials together is always difficult because wood expands and contracts at a different rate than plastic does. So certainly that has an impact as well. And thirdly, gluing anything to plastic is hard. I don't care what you're gluing to plastic. Plastic just fights gluing. I mean, why do you think they keep glue in plastic bottles? Did you ever think about that? It's because it doesn't stick to it too well. Well, I mean, I just think of things logically, just common sense. And that's how I do all of my work. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm not trying to sound like I know more than anybody else. That's not the issue. The issue is it's tough to fix this, period. It doesn't matter what you glue it with. It doesn't like to be glued. Why they ever thought they should put wood and plastic together as a major component, I don't know. Gluing plastic binding on and keeping it on is tough enough, as most of you know. It likes to come loose. Now, granted, because the old bindings would melt real good with that acetate glue, it was much easier to keep on than the new bindings are that are PVC, which is way harder to glue. Well, anyway, all that to say, we're dealing with two kinds of plastic. We're dealing with this, whatever this plastic here on the back is, which might be some sort of fiberglass, I don't know, but it's some kind of plastic. And you've got the plastic binding, which I believe is the PVC crud. I really have a tough time talking nice about PVC binding. It's just not good. So what are the odds that we're going to get it to glue and stick any better than the factory did? I mean, that's the odds that we're against here. Okay, let's talk about pros and cons. I've already told you I don't think epoxy has any place on a guitar. I really don't. I think it's the worst choice of any kind of material you can use to glue an instrument because of the vibration factor and the flex factor, or I should say the inflexibility of epoxy. If the glue doesn't have some tiny amount of flex to it, then it's always going to want to get brittle and crack, which is my complaint with hide glue. And I know I already just got another bunch of thumbs down, and I already know I just got a bunch of more complaints. There are so many people out there that just swear by hide glue. It's a good glue. I'm not knocking the fact that it isn't a good glue. I'm just not saying it's a permanently good glue. That's my issue with it. It comes loose and breaks. Again, when you've been doing this for 30 some years and you see consistently that certain things break all the time and they're glued with certain things, you start to form a few opinions. So what are my options here? What do I want to glue it with? Okay, I could try Titebond, and to be honest, I think Titebond would be better than epoxy. Do I think it's going to hold? No. Because you can put Titebond on plastic and come back 3 days later after it's really cured and peel it right off the plastic. So I don't think that's a good choice. I've already told you epoxy I don't think is a good choice. I mean, it'll probably hold a while, and epoxy will at least stick to the other crud that's in there. That's good. But it's also messy. It's hard to do a good job with epoxy in a spot like this where there's really no good crack. I mean, even though that's lifted up there quite a bit, there's no big crack there to get epoxy down in. So what are you left with? About the only thing I can think of is CA glue. Now the problem with CA glue, I mean, if you get the thin viscosity, it's going to run down in there. I'm not too worried about getting the glue in there. That part will work on its own. But CA glue is a mess. I mean, it's a real mess. I mean, yeah, you can use pipettes and kind of control it and all that kind of stuff. but it likes to go where it likes to go, and it gets on everything. I don't know about you, but like me, whenever I eat a hot dog, if I put mustard on it, inevitably I get mustard on my hand. I don't do that so much with ketchup, but with mustard, for whatever reason, it gets on me. That's the same way CA glue is. It gets on everything. It's so hard to control. So we're going to have to do some very effective tape off. And the problem with that is that, you know, we've got even this upper edge of the binding here. I don't really want to get CA glue on top of the binding here because you're going to see it. So this is really a lot tougher fix than it looks like. And then the final crushing blow on this one, and I know I'm getting long-winded here, but I just want to point out what you're dealing with when you're dealing with this kind of thing. How do you clamp it? You know, I mean, yeah, I know you can make all kinds of weird rigs and jigs, but you got to make weird rigs and jigs to clamp this thing. I mean, you put a clamp on here and it's just going to slide off. You know, it just slides right off. So, I know Randy Schartiger did one of these not too long ago, and I've done dozens of these over the years. So I'm just telling you because I don't know that I've really gone into depth about how tough this is to fix. I think it'll hold and probably hold forever, but I can't guarantee that with this kind of a fix. I really can't. You know, you think about it. As I've mentioned before, and I don't know exactly, I don't have any science exactly, I've just read somewhere that each string exerts somewhere around, I think it's 65, I don't know if it's foot-pounds or inch-pounds, I have no idea, but 65 of any kind of pounds is a lot of pressure per string, and you multiply that times 6, you got a lot of pressure pulling up here. You know, and, it's always pulling up on this. And that's why they had to take the strings off of it, of course, because it's really pulling this up bad. So anyway, in their infinite wisdom, they decided to marry wood and plastic in these Ovation guitars. They sound pretty good sometimes, but they are difficult fixes. Okay, well, enough explaining and belly aching here. I'm going to get to taping this baby off, and we're going to get to figuring out how to get the glue in there and how to clamp it. All right, and now that we've had the discussion about the different types of materials and the options with glue and things, here's one that I've avoided for more than 3 years that I've been on YouTube, and that is humidity in your guitar. I've avoided it on purpose. You notice there was mildew or mold inside this one. He had a sponge inside this one with water. Now, do I think it really hurts the instrument? No, I don't think it really hurts the instrument a lot. Do I think it's necessary to humidify every guitar in the world? No, a long way from that. I'm not on either extreme spectrum here. A little humidity is probably fine. A lot of humidity, in my opinion, is every bit as bad and perhaps worse than no humidity at all. Now you say, oh, everybody humidifies their guitars. Oh, everybody says you're supposed to do that. Well, I guess I have to agree with you. Pretty much everybody does say that. I'm the odd man out on this one. I don't think you need to humidify your guitars as much as you think. Okay, people say, well, it's dried up and it's cracking. Think about that statement for a second. What causes cracks? Shrinking rarely causes cracks. Expansion causes cracks. When they draw too much moisture, it pops your finish, in my opinion. It cracks your finish. It swells the wood up, and that wood's got to pull apart, and that finish isn't, especially an old dry finish, isn't going to stretch. It's just going to crack. When they shrink, when the wood shrinks from not getting moisture, if anything, it will shatter the finish along the cracks as they go together, and you'll see a shatter line. And I have seen that too, but it's pretty rare. Just to illustrate what I'm talking about on a top, if you pretend that this little blue towel here is a finish, As everybody says, the wood shrinks, okay? And sure, it does. I'm no fool. I know wood shrinks and expands and everything. I'm just saying, I think it's overblown. I think it's way out of proportion to reality. That's what I'm really saying. Okay, when wood shrinks, what does it do? Obviously, the wood fibers go together, right? And it just pulls itself together, shrinks. Okay, when you shrink wood, do you see any cracks? No, it buckles up, if anything. It potentially, if the finish is really hard and brittle, yeah, you could get a crack, but you will also generally see some chipping, very microscopic chip out right at the crack. When wood expands, it pulls apart, and what do? You get a crack. And the finish can't pull apart. The finish cracks. That's where you get all those fine line finish cracks, in my opinion. And where do you get that from? Because the wood is sucked in too much moisture. Keep in mind, when you build an instrument, you're building it with 6 to 8% moisture content in the wood. You finish it, you get it all done, and all of a sudden you feel like you've got to add humidity to it. Well, all you're doing is blowing up that balloon. You're just expanding that wood. I'm not so sure that's the best thing to do in all cases. In some cases, yeah, but not in all cases. Depending on where you live in the country, I say if you just keep your instrument in a comfortable location where you're comfortable, your instrument will be comfortable. You don't want to keep them in a hot, dried out attic. You don't want to keep them in a wet, damp basement. Somewhere in between there, you've got a good place to keep your instrument. That's all I'm saying. And you think, oh, well, what are you basing this on? Well, I'm basing it on common sense again, okay? Don't hear me say, don't ever humidify your guitar. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying do it with a little bit more discretion in the future and maybe a little less often than you think you need to. Here's what I base it on. When you dry wood, you dry it down to a moisture content of less than about, around 6 to 8% roughly. So you've got a piece of wood that barely has any moisture in it. Now, I realize that the moisture content in the wood and humidity in the air is two different things. They're similar, but they're different. The humidity, in your house, I think to be comfortable is what, I don't even really know, 40, 60%, something like that is in the comfort range. And I think 60 is a little on the high side. So you want some humidity in your house. And that keeps your furniture from drying out and coming apart and all that stuff, and and everything's shrinking up. But then again, you get too much humidity and your parquet wood floors start to buckle and push up because they're expanding and they don't have any place to go, so they push up. Now, I know you've seen floors do that, or at least you probably have if you've been around real wood floors. That's not drying out, that's getting too much moisture. And I see that as much damage with too much moisture as I see with too little. And the fact that we've got mildew inside this one, I would say we've had too much moisture inside this one. That's what I say. Take it with a grain of salt. Let the hate mail begin.